I love writing these bios because it's just like 2 a.m. I'm like, what do I want to say that's cool about myself? And then I'm like, oh man, people are going to read this. I totally forgot about that. All right, so here's my presentation. I think it was originally called Patriarchy and Toxic Masculinity Within Culture, and I'm like, well, I'll just kind of call it Being a Dude. So I'm just going to do an acknowledgement, talk about my story, talk about what is a dude, and if I have time, end with a poem, because I'm a poet. I always like to begin like this. Ani, kwekwe, mabuhay, Lukayo ako, biko la Tagalog ako. So I'm saying hello in the language of the land, which is Anishinaabe-Moan, and then my language, which is Tagalog. I'm introducing myself as Lukayo, and I'm Tagalog and Bicol, which is my people, and now the region is called Philippines. So I always like to thank my ancestors and spirits and those who have done this work. I thank those who continue to do this work, like my fellow panelists, like Octiva, CPO, all of you here. I'd like to thank the land and the people of this land, the Algonquin, Anishinaabe, Kitchissippi people, and apologize that this presentation is only in English. Appelez personnes qui parlent en français seulement. So je m'excuse. And autres personnes and other people who speak other languages. Yes. Oops. So, this is my story. I apologize. I got a little bit of a cold, so I'm going to try not to directly cough into the mic. Apologies to anyone who speaks after me. Sorry, Matt and Aaron. Hope you don't get a cold as well. So this is my dad, and me, and the glow of light is like that child that he's holding. So when I was a kid, my father would always tell me that he wanted to be a different man than the men that came before him and the guys in his neighborhood. He wanted to be the type of man that never hit his children and never raised a hand against his wife. He told me and my brother that he wanted us to be like that too. Now that haunted me for a long time because my dad was a decent guy, and it shocked me that that made him different. I eventually forgot about it though, because by the time I hit high school, the only thing I ever cared about was getting a date. And I had a few game plans. So there was the jock. I'm on the hockey team. I'm like one of the most valuable players. What do you say we go to a movie and you can feel up how huge my muscles are? And there was the rock star. I was trying this all in the mirror every day. It was like, I got to get a date. It's grade 9. I was like, oops, I didn't see you there. I'm like so busy being in 3 bands right now in a school media school. What do you say you come to one of my shows and stand in the back and scream my name as loud as you can? And there was the hipster. Psh, whatever. You know, I practiced. I was prepared. It had been 3 months. I saw one of my crushes in the hallway. I was walking up to them. They were like, oh, hey, what's going on? And I opened my mouth and I was like, the next thing I knew, I blacked out. I was at home. I must have teleported there through the power of my own shame and humiliation. I began Googling monasteries, figuring out where I'd spend my days whiling away in solitude because I was pretty sure that I'd be forever alone. But that all changed in 10th grade when my best friend, let's call her Anne, came over one night and told me she was in love with me. And I was all like, I did a lot of screaming. I did this because I was pretty sure this had to be fake, and she was one of the most beautiful girls I'd ever met in my life, or something sinister was going on. Either Anne saw me as a girl named Faye, and that meant Anne was a girl that liked girls, and girls that liked girls were lesbians, and my parents told me lesbians were evil. Or Anne saw me as a boy named Luke, and no one really knew that I was a boy because all my life my family said I was born with certain parts, and that was made me a girl, and even though I acted and felt like a boy a lot of the time, so I continued to try to be a girl and kept my boy Luke thing a secret, and if Anne knew my secret that she was psychic, and girls who were psychic were witches, and witches, as my parents told me, were evil. So there I was pacing my living room looking for a crucifix, trying to figure out how to expel this lesbian witch demon from my room, when I realized how ridiculous it all was. My friend Anne, my Anne wasn't being evil. She was just being in love. And I realized 2 things. 1, everything I may have been taught all my life could be lies. And 2, I was in love with her too. Now, up to that point in my entire life, I was 14. That was the happiest night I'd ever experienced. But the next week when I came to visit her at her high school and tried to hold her hand, she stepped away from me. She told me that a guy had just asked her out and she was going to be her boyfriend, that we could still sleep over and see each other, but no one could know. She told me that she'd always love me, but because I wasn't born a boy, I'd never get to marry her. We'd never be together. That was the moment I realized I had to man up, that I had to become a real man. I bought the right clothes, I talk the right way, I walk the right way, I hang out with a bunch of dudes, we talk about sports or video games or girls like they were basically a sport or a video game. I had double the amount to prove because I was A, a short Asian dude, and B, bisexual, which would mean that if anyone found out I was bi, then I had to super hetero it up, constantly not touch anybody or by accident or talk about my feelings. When I got a steady enough job by my late 20s, I started medically transitioning. The start of it is basically like taking steroids. You get injected with testosterone on a regular basis and go through the kind of puberty that makes your voice drop and hair grow all over you and you get pretty big. It was a gradual change, so I didn't notice that big of a difference until I went on a camping trip to California. I left Ottawa in a suit, no problem, everything went fine. But at the trip, most of my clothes got wet because it rained all the time, and I was flying back basically in pajamas and some of my people's traditional clothing. And I was freaked out about the way people treated me differently. Mostly other guys, thinking I was a lady, standing real close, touching my stuff to help me, talking down to me, acting pissed off when I wouldn't let them help me. It was bizarro until it hit me. In the past few months, I hadn't been yelled at on the street. I hadn't been groped at a party. I hadn't been afraid to be alone with other guys or pass out around them. Until I'd worn the wrong clothes, I'd finally become a real man. I was a dude. But was that what being a dude meant? Was that what I had wanted all along, to have pretty bi-curious girls finally date me publicly like the one in high school who broke my heart? Was being a dude meant not being the one who got harassed, beaten, or up or raped? Was being a dude meant not being afraid and vigilant all the time, that I'm not going to be harassed, beaten up, and raped? There was like 10 seconds of relief, and then all this guilt and rage came crashing down on me. This is not what I wanted. This was screwed up. Once again, I realized two things. One, everything I may have been taught all my life could be lies. And two, I needed to do something. So the first thing I did was I hit the books. I researched and Googled and wikied. Huge words were thrown around: hypermasculinity, feminism, patriarchy, transmisogyny, colonialism, blah, blah, blah. At the end of it all, it means this: being a dude is made up. Pew. There's no such thing as a real man. All this stuff is just stories within stories, like The Matrix, or, for you who are younger, Inception. We've bought into these ideas of what being a dude means as a way to control us, as a way to make money off of us. Even my own people, the Filipinos, bought into it when the Spanish came in the 1500s and killed off every single woman in power and any people that weren't man enough or too womanish. In modern times, we use these ideas of what it means to be a man and beat the crap out of each other with it, especially people who won't or who can't be like us, like women, especially trans women and racialized women, gay men, queer folks. For example, check out what a dude was in 1888 in New York. Bam! Apparently, Mr. Evander Barrywall here was known as the King of Dudes in his time, as his title. You can Wikipedia it. That is definitely not what we think of as the king of dudes nowadays. Like, I think of the Big Lebowski or Jason Momoa sitting on a throne made of swords and skulls and fire everywhere. But that's the thing, right? Masculinity, being a dude, manning up, these are all just constructs, just stories. And we can take charge of these stories and make them into something else, something that isn't just about destroying each other and proving who's the toughest. When I was in grade school, I envied this other dude because one time another guy tried to make fun of him by putting a butterfly clip in his hair. But the dude was like, "Hey, this keeps my hair out of my eyes. This is awesome." And then he just owned it. And then all the other guys were like, "Oh, I want a butterfly clip in my hair. My eyes." And he was always about treating everyone, whether they were girls or seemed gay or if they were new from a new country. It didn't matter. He treated them all like bros and best friends, like people that were important. And he didn't give up crap about whether he lived up to what other guys thought meant being a dude was. And it was guys like him and like my father that remind me whenever I start to lose my temper, whenever I want to say ridiculous stereotypes about feminine people, when I want to take up all the space in a room and not let others speak, I get reminded that there's another way to be a dude. And this is the first step. There's still going to be structural inequalities and rape culture to deal with, but at the very least, support all the work of gender equity by teaching others we don't have to one-up each other or to be the manliest. I'd love to see groups for guys to have discussions about how certain stories of manliness are destructive to your own sense of self and the other people around you. I'd love to see these groups teach dudes how to build their own story of masculinity and to make space for other people to be awesome, such as women and queer people. I love to see these groups be a resource to be called upon by women and queer people and non-binary gender people who need allies when they're having events and campaigns. But mostly, I just want to see it exist. I want to see more work done on deconstructing toxic masculinity and rebuilding positive masculinity to acknowledge all the kinds of dudes that are out there. Oh, I thought I took this picture out. Anyways, this is like me and my family and hanging out. This is different kinds of dudes that my family has. That's my dad in the center, my brother with the black tie. That's me also with the black tie, doing my dude pose. Yeah, those are all the women in our family, and then the little kids. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a poem to close. If we have time for that, do we, Adrian? Awesome. This poem is called Confessional. This room is my confessional, and each and every single one of you, my witnesses, that I'm afraid to be a woman, that I'm afraid I will never be a good enough man. And we are born into this world with certain roles laid out for us, male. We are born into this world with certain roles laid out for us, female. And they tell me there's nothing to fear, little girl, you just are a woman. But they're lying through their toothy smiles, their eyes, and dressing and impressing me, because if it's all about just being a woman, then how come I can be a woman badly? How come everything I do and say is not the ladylike female way? And my mama always told me that life is not like a box of chocolates a knock. How can you even get a husband if you don't throw your shoulders back, bum out, smile, and be a woman? And I go, Mom, I look like I have permanent duck lips. She doesn't even know what duck face is, but she just shakes her head all the same, asking God why she can get a real daughter, why she got the suit and tie wearing, Dungeons and Dragons playing, mouth like Chris Rock when he speaks, mouth like a vacuum cleaner when I eat, face like a shih tzu, walk like a b-boy, romantic like a bibliophiliac, let's pick up whatever gender tonight, kind of daughter, the kind of daughter that wasn't woman enough, because for her to be a woman meant to shut up, do what you're told, be pretty, be thin, be chaste, let them push you around, let them push themselves into you, let them pillage your temple and walk away with the prize for her to be a woman and everything that I wasn't. So if I'm not a woman, Mom, then what am I? Will I ever be a good enough man for you? I'm gender confused in a confusion of gender, and don't you dare tell me there's nothing to fear, little girl. You just are a woman because we are lying. There are toothy smiles, our eyes, and dressing and oppressing femininity. I am afraid. I am terrified to be a woman. I am afraid. I am terrified I'll never be a good enough man. But there are girls out there who want to be warriors. There are boys out there who want to be queens. There are little girls who just want to grow up, travel around, and have a string of adventures. Little boys who just want to grow up, find a good man, settle down, and have some kids. Little girls and little boys all over the world who are being told to throw your shoulders back, bum out, smile, be a woman, be a man. I am tired, and I'm afraid of this gender binary state. I'm afraid of a world that tells us how to be, that tells us how to be, instead of acknowledging that there is a space for us, instead of acknowledging the entire spectrum of what it means to be a person. And maybe one day, someday, there will be a place for us geeks, freaks, and warrior queens. But until then, this room is my confessional, and each and every single one of you are my witnesses that I am afraid to be a woman, that I'm afraid I'll never be a good enough man. We are born into this world with certain roles laid out for us, male. We are born into this world with certain roles laid out for us, female. But sometimes we have to find our own damn way. Thank you.